Hello, so I mentioned I want to do a video about this a couple weeks ago. So a lot of people talk about like hard counters or soft counters, and I kind of want to do a video kind of explaining what hard counters are. A lot of people, I think, overuse the term hard counter because they don't understand what a hard counter is, or they just like to overplay certain things. So I'm going to talk about like differences here. And like I said, hard counter, of course, is one of those terms that is almost ubiquitous in online gaming. But kind of looking into it, like it's apparently, it doesn't seem to, it actually did not originate in online gaming. Doing research, it actually originated in the 1990s with a card game called Magic the Gathering. And the term originated because you have spells in that game, like for example, like the go-to, like the standard like counter spell in that game is literally called counter spell, right? You play that spell, it counters the spell, right, and that ends it. But then when you contrast that, the spell called Mana Leak, which also counters a spell, but the opponent can actually cancel that counter, right? They have an option to buy out of it, and that's what I said. So the people always called that a soft counter, and that's kind of where that terminology comes from. So in the context of Hero Wars, right, certain heroes hard counter other heroes, right? So if you go, like let's say you want to beat a Rufus, right? The hard counter to Rufus is Morgan, right? Like I said, so if you run a Morgan here, normally Rufus would be really good versus the twins. He's a soft counter, or even soft counter because you can still beat him with physical attacks. There's right. Sometimes you can hold off your ults and try to beat him with a physical attack. So he's actually what you'd call a soft counter twins, but he's pretty effective. He's not quite a hard counter, but he's pretty close to a hard counter versus like magic users, because you have to beat him with physical damage. But Morgan, she has an ability called Necromancy, which actually breaks that. So let's just slow this down again. Right, so Rufus did not revive like he normally would, because normally when he dies, he revives if he's not killed with physical attacks, right? Like I said, so we actually have this battle here, this one with Sebastian instead of Morgan, right? Like I said, Sebastian, you don't need Sebastian against this enemy team because they don't have stage effects, right, when everyone dies, so Rufus will keep reviving, right? So that's the difference, like, so Morgan just completely shuts him down and hard counters him, but when you have another team, he'll actually just keep reviving. Something said, now note, it is possible to actually still beat Rufus with this team. Like if you hold back, like if you turned off, stop using the ults and stuff, you might have a chance of just hitting him with like a crit on Sebastian or something. Like said, but you're not gonna see it in this fight, but I have beat Rufus with these team lines like this. It's not recommended. Best option would be to actually drop Axel for Kayn and then try to finish it with a Kayn ult. Rufus is what we call a soft counter to this team. Like, he's not a hard counter. He's pretty close to a hard counter. He's very good, but he's not quite a hard counter. Morgan, however, is a hard counter to Rufus. Here's another example. This is against, like, so Satori and Jorgen. When Sebastian came out, he actually completely and totally hosed Satori and Jorgen. Right, by himself, he can actually totally shut down them from being able to do anything. Like, so all the marks that a Satori puts up, right? See how Satori's ult just did nothing? And that's because he puts up Foxfire marks. If there's no Foxfire marks, ult does nothing. Jorgen, like I said, they're not able to land any of their abilities, and Sebastian keeps refreshing his Ode. Right, so that's actually, so Sebastian is actually, in this situation, a hard counter to both Satori and Jorgen. Right, so there's a lot of heroes Sebastian's a soft counter to. Sebastian's a soft counter to like a third of the heroes in the game. But to Satori and Jorgen specifically, he is a hard counter. He soft counters the heroes like Arachne and whatnot. But they still, like I said, have other abilities. But, right, so just keep that in mind. See, and this is another example where you have, right, so this is, we talk about Sebastian. Right, so Sebastian is a soft counter to Arachne. So, like said, so she has a hard time landing those stuns. I mean, Arachne still does good damage, has other utility, but as long as Sebastian's old Ode Disrendius, there's not much Arachne can do stun-wise. Like I said, she still has Vampirism, and can be is super tanky and whatever, so she still has use on like Jorgen and Satori, who are pretty much useless with Ode Disrendius. But with Maya, right, you're actually able to strip that off with a Biscuit Patron. So Maya plus Biscuit is a soft counter to Sebastian, not a hard counter, even though she strips it completely, pretty effectively. Eventually, Sebastian might be able to ode again and bring this back up. But with the soft, like I said, with Maya being able to soft counter Sebastian, you're actually able to get Arachne to use her ults and start stunning him. But again, stuns aren't forever. So again, this is, like I said, is stun cheese. Arachne could be a soft counter to a lot of teams. But again, Sebastian does protect against... Sebastian is a really powerful soft counter to pretty much all status effect-based strategies. He's a hard counter to Satori and Jorgen specifically, but for every other status effect-based hero, I'd say he's more of a soft counter. Because it's not completely shutting down those heroes. There should be another example. This one's actually a really tough team. Right, a very tough team. And again, we're going to run the same line we did. This is probably not the best line to beat this team, but this is a pretty good team. But again, like if you run Biscuit, and also note, I don't have Axel on this side. So Axel, it's super important to note that Axel, because he spreads out your own damage on your own team, he can actually cause your ode to get stripped faster. Super important thing to keep in mind if you're going to use Axel is that if enemies have like status effect buffs or anything, like say you might have a Biscuit patron on one of these heroes or something, like then all of a sudden the Biscuit patron, because you have Axel here, they'll actually get to strip off more of your ode charges. So to keep that in mind. But see, like I said, even though Sebastian had ode up, you were able to strip it with Maya again and land the stuns to kind of lock them down. Right, even though Isaac, Iris, Leanne are all pretty good soft counters to these kinds of teams. Like Ray said, Leanne's a pretty good soft counter to a lot of teams. Iris is a very strong soft counter to tanks in general. But again, because, like I said, she finally got rid of Aurora, but like I said, this team is now really bad critical position. And because we were able to strip off the ode earlier and just kind of work this team down, Arachne's able to go to work and just kind of finish them off. Right, so that's a win there. I guess I should show you what kind of patrons we had. Right, I actually didn't have a Biscuit patron either, which might have been a mistake, but it just kind of is a general. But this is also a perfectly acceptable setup. For that, like I said, Biscuit on Iris might have been better, but Iris does a lot more damage with Albus, right? So it's really hard to say what would have been the best, but right, not bringing Axel here can definitely help your win rate here. But like I said, Iris did quite a few damage, but you still was able to get a win because Maya plus Biscuit can soft counter Ode to Serenity, or Ode soft counter Sebastian, even though, like I said, a lot of these heroes are soft counters to here. Like Isaac is a soft counter to Aurora. Like I said, he's a soft counter to mage strategies in general. Not a hard counter, except maybe against Celeste. I'd say he's probably a hard counter to Celeste and Satori since their basic attacks are magic based. He's probably hard counter. I'd say hard counter Celeste and probably Satori. Though Sebastian's probably better at that. So, and then let's see, I did another one. So a lot of people, guys criticized me in one of my recent videos because so this is actually, well, so we'll get to second. So this is just a Yasmin team here, but so we're going to run this one. Those was, a lot of people said I should have did an Astaroth Kark team in my Astaroth video I did the other day. So we're going to run this video, just this one here. And like I said, we're going to just kind of point out, like, so Isaac is a soft counter to Aurora. He's not a hard counter. Like I said, note his charge builds up really slowly because Aurora is the only one doing any kind of magic damage on this team. So it takes a long time for Isaac to get his charge. We're already 20 seconds in. Still hasn't landed silence. Finally, 22 seconds in, he's able to land a silence. But dodge buffs are up. And, the team just dodged Kark's ult here. Astaroth is getting killed by Yasmin. Right. And the silence is gone. Aurora's back to buffing dodge. And this team's back to dodging. So Isaac definitely not a hard counter to Aurora. He's very good. He is a soft counter. Like I said, and finally, like I said, she took a critical hit and died, but it's much too late now. Because now you got Yasmin here. She's going crazy. right? And boom, they're dead, right? A team like this would probably have Sebastian instead of Fox, but I wanted to put a no Sebastian line just to kind of show you off like Isaac here. Note we had Albus on Yasmin and Kane on Aurora, just in case you're wondering. That's why Yasmin wasn't doing a whole lot of ulting, but she still did enough. Like sometimes, honestly, I think for a lot of times if you use Aurora Yasmin, I do think a lot of times it really depends what you're expecting, what you're going against. But a lot of times Albus on Yasmin is the right play. Sometimes you'll have Oliver Aurora, then Kane here, and then you'll have Sebastian with Albus. That also works. But so yes, this didn't get the job done. This said even though Isaac. So Fizz can be strong versus Aurora. He is not a hard counter versus Aurora. A lot of people say Isaac hard counter to Aurora. Like, no, those people are wrong. Completely, totally wrong. Also, the Astaroth Kark team didn't do too well. So this is the same team, but this time we're going to use Aurora instead of Astaroth. It should be noted that Aurora is a good soft counter to both Yasmin and Martha. Right, Aurora is very good at against Martha because she can keep that teapot off the board because any AE damage knocks over Martha's teapot, which makes Aurora a soft counter. She's also makes it a soft counter versus Yasmin because Yasmin has to do critical attacks, climb critical hits to cause the damage here, but because of the dodge buffs, look, all that dodging, she was only able to get 2 of those counters on, which greatly reduces her damage outputs. And then she dies, like I said. So right. So Aurora being able to soft counter, Yasmin being able to soft counter Martha, right? So Martha's teapots, like I said, she couldn't keep a teapot up. Like I said, so and that's that. This is gonna go on a second because Martha's pretty tanky. She has an all over patron, I think. Yeah, she has all over patron, so it's gonna take a second. There you go. So now she's dead. Alright, so that's just like switching out again. So Aurora, soft counter to Yasmin, soft counter to Martha, which makes her a better tank. And like I said, right, because Astaroth, he doesn't counter anything, which is also, again, like my point in the other video, Astaroth is a bad tank. Don't use him. Switch to Aurora as soon as you can, or Cleaver if you have him, or maybe Luther, or even Anvari, who's not even technically a tank, but he's better than Astaroth. Right, like I said, so that's the difference just by, like, talk about hard counters or soft counters. That's what they mean. Like I said, that's what the difference is. I mean, Aurora's really good versus Martha. Not quite a hard counter. Not quite a hard counter to Yasmin or Martha, but she's very good versus them. Anyway, that's it. Like I said, I don't have too much more to say about hard and soft counters. Hope you guys found this video informative. Thank you for watching.